Hello, today I'm excited to share 3 different types of layers. What it is, I'm going to be doing the same sectioning on the head, but I'm going to be doing different angles to show you what those angles do on the head shape. So I have it broken down into 4 different divisions, and this is Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, and Division 4. What I like to do is think of the top of the head as the center of the pie, and these are the pieces of the pie. And the one piece that we already cut, we did a French bang, we did a side bang, and we did a block bang on Ginger. And these are in videos that I also have if you'd like to see them. But today we're concentrating, and that was 3 different ways to cut a bang. Today we're talking about 3 different ways to layer the hair. With that being said, I have it in 4 different sections. And what I like about doing any kind of a part, whatever it is that you need to do to section off the head so you can work in one division at a time, that helps you, again, just like in the world of hair color, it's the same as in hair cutting. You want to keep a technical, methodical way of moving around the head. So in this particular situation, I sectioned her off into 4 divisions, and they are like pieces of pie. It's smaller, closer to the top of the head, and then you go wider down to the bottom. When you're cutting hair, there's 3 movements: elevation, over direction, and finger angle. Elevation is an up and down movement, over direction is side to side, and finger angle is in and out. This is you in relationship to the head. So these are 3 basic movements, and these are movements that you do every time you pick up hair, you cut off hair, and you leave hair after it's been cut. It will fall to a certain place. So it's important to know when you cut that hair and when you elevate that hair, over direct that hair, or whatever your finger angle is going to dictate where that hair is going to fall. So 4 major divisions, so I can work in one division at a time. I'm going off the top of the head because it is layers that we are working on today. I'm going to subsection this section and do one little section at a time. So basically my subsection, these are my 4 sections. Within that one section, you're going to have subsections, which is also going to be like a pie shape. So my first section, I'm going to elevate straight up off the head, and my finger angle, so elevation is straight up 90. Your 90 is this, and your 45 is the distance between the 90s. So when you are combing the hair, when I say it's a elevation is 90, that means it's straight up. And my finger angle on this particular cut is going to be also a 90. So you're going to see this is a horizontal 90. Great example of what a vertical 90 is. Here's vertical, and here's horizontal, here's vertical. And it's important to, if you want to consistently cut this same haircut on this client, and she said I want it exactly like last time, you can repeat this consistently over and over again. The reason consistency is important, it takes out the fear in hair cutting. Who doesn't want to cut hair with less fear? You definitely know that we're trying to make women happy all day long, right? We do not want to have one woman be pissed off. So elevation's 90, finger angle's 90. Technically, if I wasn't doing camera, I'd probably go palm to palm, but today I'm going to go off the top of my finger. And my finger angle's 90, elevation's 90. I'm not over directing forward, and I'm not over directing back. So I just reiterated the 3 things we do every time we pick up hair: elevation, over direction, and finger angle. Normally I would stop at your first knuckle because that's where you have consistent tension, but what you do is just recomb the hair and re-grab it. And that's 90. Now, we discussed once I cut the hair off, if I did it, which I'm going to, at a 45, finger angle outward, it would make it shorter in the front and longer in the back. If I did an inward, it would make it shorter in the back and longer in the front. So this is where I talked about earlier, your finger angle determines where that weight's gonna fall. Your elevation, your over direction also determines. So these are three things, just three things that you have to think about. Easy enough, right? So you keep practicing that. And as in the world of hair color, it's better to teach a method and not formulas. The same in hair cutting. This is called Hair Metrics 360, which I'm paying it forward because my mom was in the industry and she taught me. I want to teach others. And it's a great method that helps you get in and out of situations left and right in the day-to-day salon environment. So that was section 1. Now what I'm going to do is consistently go around the head and continue to do that same elevation, over direction, and finger angle. And what I'm doing is I'm going to be elevating straight directly over each part. And I'm using that previous one that's already been cut as my guide for the length. So you want a little bit of your last section so that it's guide for your next section. This is where we go in subsection. The longer the hair, the harder it is. So if I had a bunch of extra hair, I'd definitely try another palm to palm or cut off the top, whatever's comfortable for you. There's a lot of people in the industry where I have heard say, well, no, you need to do it like this. And I'm like, no, I'm going to do what works for me. So that's what comes to us being creatives. As long as we're able to understand what we're doing it, why we're doing it, and we can produce the result, then that's what works for you. But the main thing is to try to understand what it is that you're trying to create. Once you've understood that and you have the basics, you have unlimited creativity from there. I'm going into my third section. So I did 1 section, 2 section. This is my third section. And you'll see, when you have it right, it's as straight as a paintbrush. When the hair's scruffy and you've over directed too far, well, that's still straight, but it's not a 90. So you can see it's longer here and shorter there. And if you cut that off, you just lost the consistency of your elevation, your over direction, and your finger angle. So that's section 1. And the reason I parted the hair this way to demonstrate layers is so that you can see right when we hit our corners. So this is the center back of the head, and I traveled over each section. So I went section 1, section 2, section 3. I traveled over each section. When you're dealing with the head shape and the hair on the head, the widest points as a whole, it's like however you want to place it, but the widest points of the head are usually your 90s. So from ear to ear, front to back. So your 90s is here, and the distance between the two 90s is right here. So that's when that's what determines your corner. That's when you're in the corner of the head. Is your 45s are the distance between the two 90s. So here's a 90 and here's a 90. The center of that is your 45s. That is the area that points out your corners. So just the reason to know it as a rule of thumb, you're in your corner. And then that's what helps you. That's also your 45. When you're doing hair and you're cutting hair, you're basically doing geometry. So we are smarter than people think. So when it comes to your corner, that's the distance between the two 90s, 45. When it comes to the widest point of the heads, this is your 90 and this is your 90. So those two areas are something to keep in mind. According to that principle, I've sectioned the hair. So I've sectioned the hair at the 45, I sectioned the hair at the 45, and you have that points out the different spaces and the different parts of the head that I'm in. I purposely did that today so I can explain that. So now we're in the corner. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut and do the 90 elevation, finger angle 90, and I'm going to direct it straight over the part. That's my direction. And then I'm going to bring everything back to that. And you have to know what that creates when you ever direct things back. When it falls forward, it's going to fall longer. So that's a principle. It's a guiding principle. And there is a method to the madness for all of us creatives out there. When we mix our creative with our technical, you're going to continuously have more accurate, predictable results. It takes you in from strengthening what's your strength is being creative, but if you're just creative and not technical, how do you know how to reproduce the same thing each time? Because you can't reproduce things by just having feelings, because that's what creatives do. We feel things, and that's how we end up creating them. But if you need to recreate it and keep your client in your chair so they're not mad at us for doing something totally different from one time to the other, then you want to learn your technical. And when you combine the two, you just get to be this outrageous, amazing hairstylist behind the chair that clients are going to go tell all their friends, and you're going to get busier than you know what to do with. So that is your second section. And then here's the last. So at the last, I'm stopping at the whitest point of the head. So I'm not over directing it this way. I like to show this, and I'm not over directing it that way. I'm bringing it straight here. So a 90 even means the hair down at the bottom, you're going to see it come straight up as a 90. I'm bringing it back to the corner, and how I know I'm in my corner is you're going to see a paintbrush with the hair that's remaining in my finger. And you want to try not to pass your second knuckle, because that's where you have the best tension in your fingers as far as consistency. So when this falls down, look where it's landing, in the corner. And because I over directed this stuff back to the corner, it's leaving it longer in this area. And the reason that's important in that area is this is the area where you have the mastoid process, and that's the distance between your hairline and the ear. If you don't allow for that, we end up cutting out or cutting the hair too short in this area. So over directing helps that a little bit in the area where it's keeping length and it's keeping weight still in that area by directing it slightly back to the corner. And the more we spend time together, the more you're going to understand the method to this madness. Sometimes people are like, what did you just say? You hear it enough and it starts soaking in. I would duplicate the same thing, but you can see how that releases weight, and you just put a little bit of product in there and you diffuse it a little, or you blow dry it, because when you're doing layers, what it does is it takes off weight or takes out weight to build volume. Even anytime you release weight, it's going to go open and it's going to get fuller and bigger. So what we did is we took off weight in that area to build volume. And I do have this left section already sectioned, just the way we all started off, and I'm going to do a different layer on this side. But I want you, on your right side, I did the 90 finger angle. On your left side, I'm going to do a different angle, and I'm going to show you in just a sec. But I want you to see how this hair, just like when you're trying to even fluff it or scrunch it, how it just flops. And then you look over on this side, and just even with just a little bit of a scrunch, it's got all this volume, it's taken off the weight, and it even has shape. A different shape compared to this. Not like this one's better or that, but what if your client says my top's too heavy or my hair's too heavy and I can't get volume? You have a solution for them now. You're going to give them a layer. But then some people say, oh, every time I layer my hair, it gets really thin on the bottom. I'm going to show you what to do at the angle to keep all the weight and keep the volume and the thickness on the bottom. There are people that want to keep that weight. So if there's someone that wants to keep the weight in their hair, I have a technique in the layering where I can keep all the bulk down at the bottom and take the weight off the top, so it doesn't thin out the bottom. And it's merely by changing your angle. And you know, I was trained a little different. It wasn't with doll heads. We were trained with real people, which were a lot harder because you can't do the haircut that you want to. So what I highly recommend is, I was so against practicing on doll heads because I'm like, they're not the same as real people. But it is when you're learning a method. Yes, they don't have the cowlicks and they don't have the growth patterns that real clients have, but regardless, it gives you time to practice and allows you to practice the things that you want to, instead of getting the client in your chair and going, oh, I learned this new thing, I want to practice on you, and they're going to really want to pay for you practicing. No, our license is to practice regardless. I like to try new techniques or something different on a situation like this, and then I can go back and do it on my client because I'm already in the practice of. So they're not my experiment. So on this side, I'm going to section that away. I'm not using that as a guide. Normally I would use this side as a guide for the left side, but the right side we cut with a different finger angle, so I'm not going to. I'm going to start off. And this is what we're creating here. Is I'm going to go in an outward 45, and that outward 45, when this drops down, that's going to create more weight like we just talked about in the bottom. My first section is in the center. What I highly recommend, what I'm doing today is standing off to get out of the way for you to see what I'm doing, but what I would recommend for you is to always stand right in front of your work. It's really important for you to actually see the angle, see the sectioning, and this took a lot of practice to be able to move out of the way and actually cut hair. And that could be something you want to do so that you're standing in a different area, but when you're learning, you should stand in front of your work so you understand it first, and then you can make adjustments from there. Now, what's good is we're going to have two different sides, so I'm going to show you what just changing an angle, you can look at one side versus the other. And finger angle, you can do palm to palm. See? So when it's not palm to palm, I'm going straight up at a 90, check my 90, and this time my finger angle is outward. What makes it outward versus inward? Outward is when it's going out, so the tips of my fingers going that way, and the back of my hand is going down, and the tips of my fingers going up. So what that is doing is still making the top really short. And then the graduation is really cool because the higher you elevate the hair, the wider the width of the graduation. And what you're going to see is with this long piece and this short piece, what's really cool is you can watch the graduation. The distance between the short hair and the long hair gets even wider. So look at how long that is and how short this is. But we're creating a shape, and it's a balanced shape. This is a particular haircut that when it grows out, it's going to be nice, it's going to hold up well, and it's going to keep its shape. And I'm going to mimic the same thing. My 90 is straight over my part. I'm not over directing back, I'm not over directing forward. So keep remembering elevation, over direction, finger angle. I want to say that so many times that it's in your head when you're cutting hair, you're going to keep saying, what's my elevation? What's my over direction? And you want to check it. I'm cutting on the opposite side of the hair. Ideally, you should be on the other side. But again, I'm all about you do you. Do what's comfortable. But my guide is used from that previous section. And you're still creating shorter piece to long. This creates more, even wider width of graduation than just cutting at a 90. When it drops, it's not as wide. It's not as drastic between long and short. And what does this do? That leaves the weight in the bottom for those clients that might have really fine hair, that when you layer it too much, it gets really stringy down there. So it's a way someone could have layer, and trying to explain this to clients sometimes is a little tricky, but it's a way where you still can have a layered head of hair and still have the volume that you desire without taking it out down here. So the next step, so that was 1, 2, section 3. Section 3, now we're at our corner. And ideally you want to use the mirror too as one of your tools. I look in the mirror, so say a mirror was over there, I would look and be able to check my elevation, over direction, finger angle. The mirror is a tool. So my fingers are up to the sky, my hands down to the head. All you have to do with this, and it does take practice, is stay consistent each and every time. So we did section 1, section 2, section 3. section 3 last time when we were over there. That's the one piece of pie. Outside of that pie, now we're in the 45. So we're pointing out the corners, right? We talked about that. So I'm going to keep reminding you every time we're in the corners so that you remind yourself when you're doing a haircut. And I have had situations in the salon where they're like, the haircut, I went somewhere else and it didn't hold up like you did it. Because a lot of times, and they might have some kind of method that they're using that's not really cohesive and making sense with the head shape. So they might be, there's people out there that can definitely cut hair with no method. You can pick up hair and cut it anytime, any way. Most anyone could do it. But what makes the difference between good and great is to know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what it's going to produce at the end of the day. See how you still see a lot of weight at the bottom, and look at all that volume at the top. This is a great onset to what it would take to do a shag. But shags have a tendency to be more sparse in the bottom, but it goes to show you, you can still have long hair sitting at the foundation and short hair sitting on top. So the last section, I'm bringing back to the corner. I'm going to turn this way so you can see this side too. So see how my fingers are going down, and the higher I elevate my elbow and the back of my hand, and the lower I elevate my fingers. You can do this in really long hair. You can take it from this shorter piece and just start sliding it out, and it creates all of this layer on top of very long hair, and it blends it instead of just having a chop layer up top and then this hair that's just hanging on the bottom. It has stuff that goes together. So this is the corner. We're bringing everything back to it. So these next sections are going to go to that corner. And I'll stop right at her ear where the skin meets her ear. And this next section, we're now entering into the corner. We're bringing everything back to the corner so that it falls longer to the front. Bring the hair straight up at a 90 as our elevation. Finger angle is a steep 45. And there's no over direction. I'm just directing straight over the part. Well, actually, I'm over directing it back to the corner. The last and final section is from the bevel to where the skin meets the ear. On people, it's different from person to person, but that in general is the widest part of the head in the ear area. And the other thing that I would like to cover at this point in time, since we're in this area, one thing that's really important about this area is that, yes, I am cutting on a doll head. So when this falls back, you're seeing it's all coming right to the 45, which is the corner. With the doll head, you don't have to worry about cowlicks too much. Okay, so the thing that's important that doesn't really exist on the doll head is an average human being has cowlicks in the back of their head. This is what I was told as a young girl, and I grew up in the industry with a mom in the industry, and what I was told is this is like how the hair sweeps around and it goes in a circle. So all those people that have come into us for years that say one side always kicks out and the other side's perfect. Well, it starts from the cowlick. So you're going usually in a circle, and the wider it goes on the head, one side's kicking under and the other side's kicking out. It's just that cowlick getting bigger. That's the pattern of the way the hair grows on the head. So in this area, sometimes they're more extreme on one side versus the other. The other lays nice and it's flat, and this one pops up. What you want to do, a hot tip on balancing that out, is you're going to want to leave it a little longer on that side. That weight helps it look longer and balance out to the side that's actually flatter, because this is going to have more of a kick or a pop, and this side's going to lay and behave. So that side usually cups under really nice, and this side kicks out. So the side that kicks out is the side you want to leave a scotch more length to balance it out from side to side to allow for how the hair grows. So people keep that in mind. Just like when we're cutting bangs, there's usually a higher cowlick on one side versus the other. The same thing exists in the back, so it's just one of those things. Our eyes are a tool we use to see how their hair is growing, and then we modify our cut accordingly. So that's a really important tip. Now, I will blow dry to the best of my ability with this beautiful doll head, and you're going to see the distinction between this side and this side. I did a steep 45 where I'm leaving the back longer. I'm going to quickly do a opposite. I'm going to do a higher elevation in the front and lower in the back, and change my angle to a 45 but going vertical back instead of vertical forward. I'm going to just do it really quick on one piece and demonstrate. And then we're going to put some product in this babe and get her dry. Okay, I'm just going to quickly show you that finger angle. So these are 3 different ways. One finger angle is 90. The second one is a horizontal, it's a vertical going down. This is going to be a vertical going back, but they're both 45s. They're just going in a different direction. So I'll start in the center point, and remember, if you need to, break the doll head down in pies. Sectioning. Pie sectioning always helps because it makes you work on one division at a time. It's important to focus on one division at a time, because if you're worried about the next section, then you're not concentrating about what you're doing on the first section. So it's best to take this section and just focus on it. Here is almost a typical head of hair right here too. If you notice, she has less hair on top and more hair in back. But what we're going to do is we're going to change the angle. The elevation's remaining the same through all 3 of these. The finger angle is what's changing. I'm fingers up and palm down. And of course this switches when you go on to the other side of the head. But whatever the case may be, you're going to get your hands in that position to create, go off that last strand, you're going to get the hands in the position to create shorter down here and longer, so it's going to create more weight on the top and more layering on the bottom. That's the first section. Second section, I'm going straight over the part again. The straight over the section is my elevation straight up 90. Finger angle, I'm just going to say it's at an angle going down, and the angle is 45. And see how this is really heavy right here, and then how it gets really sparse right there? Another form of a shag. When you do anything more extreme, you can create even a whole completely different look. We have one more section, and I did everything the exact same section, same elevation, same over directing it straight over the part, and the only thing I did different was I changed the finger angle. And that finger angle right there changed the whole haircut. And I stopped at the corners. But can you see the distinction between the weight that's there now and wasn't, and down here it's really sparse? That's not the haircut you want to do on somebody that wants the bottom to be really full and keep their weight. It's the opposite. So we demonstrated 90 degree, we demonstrated outward and inward 45. Anytime your fingers directing going down and forward, that's going to create more length and weight towards the bottom. Anytime your fingers are directing going back, that's going to create a lot more sparse underneath and more weight on top. I'm going to blow this dry, and then we're going to show a little bit of an example of what the 2 sides look. She didn't have 3 sides, so I ended up with the 90 over here and the 45 there. And the most important thing is that you see the distinction between what the 2 angles do to change the effect of the haircut. very fun and exciting. It goes to show you what I'm talking about. I love how the proof is in the pudding. And I don't know where that saying came from, but it is a saying. You can see on this side how there's more weight up top and sparser on the bottom. You can go through and thin this all out with thinning shears. So there's going to be more classes to come. And this is just touching bases on 3 ways to do a layer. One we did at 90, one we did an outward 45, and one we did an inward 45. So we did 3 different layers, along with the fact that you can see how it creates more weight up top, takes out weight through here, keeps length on the bottom, so it scoops it in. And then on this side, you can see how we talked about the way that we layered the right side is it's still really soft and bouncing, has lots of volume on the top. It evenly graduates as it goes down, and it keeps the weight in through the perimeter. So visually you can see exactly what I predicted was going to happen, is that she was going to have weight here, weight taken off there. That was a way to layer the top, give it short, balance the haircut, and still keep the weight on the bottom. There's clients that want that, and now you know what to do with a method that you can actually predict the results. Same with hair color, same with cutting. I think it's important to learn how to do it and have a method, not to learn just a haircut. This is a way that if you understand your elevation, your over direction, and your finger angle, you can create any hair design, and you do it section by section and focus on one section at a time, then you can create any look at the end of the day by just changing an angle, which is your fingers, or an elevation, or or how you over direct it. In the front here, we did not cut the front of her hair, but had you wanted to leave most weight into the front and keep it the longest, you would go from the shortest piece here and do your finger angle out, and you can even slide it out from the short piece to the long and create this really cool graduation falling forward of the face. You could change the angle and have it go really short here to long, and that would bring it shorter around the face and bring the weight into the corner in the back. So that will be another class. And the same thing on this side, and it depends on if you want to do your horizontal or if you want to cut it vertically. Those are a whole other class, and I'm going to share that with you in the up and coming videos. These are just the beginning of so many, and there's so much more information that I have to share. So come hang out with us and keep checking out the videos.